The Holy Gospel according to Matthew, the 2nd chapter. Glory to you, O Lord. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, Magi came from the east to Jerusalem asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star in the east and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet, 'And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel.'" Then Herod secretly called for the Magi and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word so that I may also go and pay him homage." When they had heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had seen in the east, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then, opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. Today's Gospel reading is about three kings, but probably not the ones that you're thinking of. Yes, popular Christmas carols insist that there are three Magi, although you notice that Matthew's text only mentions three gifts and never three people. It's entirely possible that a whole caravan of many Magi, and maybe even their families, traveled to Jerusalem and then Bethlehem. And I know that those same carols insist that the three were kings, but that's not true to the biblical account either. Scholars believe that these were no royals, but most likely Zoroastrian priests, those who tended fire temples on earth, while also training their attention on the fires of the heavens, planets, comets, and stars. No, we have three different kings in today's story, with three very different ideas of what kingship and power might mean. In the time of King Herod is where we find today's reading, our first king for today. Jesus is probably around 2 years old, and the aforementioned priests travel from what is today modern Iraq to Jerusalem asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews?" When King Herod heard this, he was frightened. You see, although he was referred to as King Herod, he really wasn't a king at all, but a puppet for Roman rule, more like a corrupt governor than anything that we would consider to be like a king. And not only was Herod not really a king, but his Jewishness was also highly suspect. Although he famously rebuilt the Jerusalem temple, he also replaced the high priests, not based on hereditary succession, but on his own personal whims, even keeping the priestly garments in his own household. He promoted Gentiles to all kinds of political and court positions, which would have made him perpetually ritually unclean and thus unable to worship in that temple. And he installed a golden image of an eagle, the symbol of the Roman Empire itself, over the entrance to that temple. For someone else to be named King of the Jews when Herod's own position was based on a lie, well, it was a serious threat to him and to his power. And not only was Herod frightened when he heard about a child born king of the Jews, but also all Jerusalem with him. If there is anything that all scholars seem to agree upon, whether ancient or modern, whether Jewish, Christian, or of no faith at all, it's that Herod the Great was one of the cruelest rulers imaginable, even by the standards of his own time. When he was appointed ruler of Judea, his inaugural act was to execute 45 Jerusalemites who had publicly supported his rival. In order to keep from being deposed over the course of his long rule, he assassinated family member after family member, his 3 oldest sons, his favorite wife, his mother-in-law. Herod ruled his entire life via tyranny, instilling fear in everyone around him. Of course, all Jerusalem is also frightened. Herod's a loose cannon, and he might kill just about anyone. Herod calls together all the chief priests and scribes of the people and asks where the Messiah is supposed to be born. Their verdict is unanimous: Bethlehem. This shows just how poorly informed Herod is about his own faith. Anytime you can get a group of religious experts in 100% agreement about anything, it's a sign the subject is a very simple one, much too straightforward to be worth any kind of theological disagreement. He is really showing his ignorance with this question. Herod may be ruler of Judea, but he's no king of the Jews. The second of our kings actually doesn't appear in the story at all, at least not explicitly. But the shadow of his presence overhangs not just today's text, but all of the Gospels. And that king is Caesar Augustus, Emperor of Rome. Caesar's influence on this story takes place in the negative, by the opposites that we see in the story. Again, the aforementioned Magi have traveled all this way to honor the King of the Jews. They're not here for Herod, obviously. But more importantly, they also haven't come to show any kind of honor to Caesar. These priests have traveled not from another part of Rome's territory, but from the Parthian Empire, with their own governmental, military, and religious leadership. These were the days when the emperor was considered to be a god, and the citizens of its provinces were obligated to sacrifice to him in worship. But these priests don't recognize Caesar's authority at all, not politically, and definitely not divinely. They maintain their own religious beliefs and their own political loyalties. But they know what they've seen in the stars. And it spells a new era. It foreshadows a new kind of kingdom. And so, when they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. And so, they kneel in worship and present Jesus with gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Wild gifts to give to a toddler, but not for a king, and definitely not for a god. Rather than offering gold and incense to an image of Caesar Augustus, they bring these gifts to the third king in our reading. That third king, as he appears in today's story again, is likely no more than 2 years old. He's found in a little house belonging to a humble carpenter in the care of his mother, Mary. Is this little boy scared to find strangers in the house, or delighted at the stranger's unusual dress and demeanor? What did Mary and Joseph make of these strange gifts? And did the whole neighborhood gossip about their guests and their lavish presents? The story leaves us to wonder about these details. Yet, long after this unusual episode from Jesus' toddlerhood, we see in Jesus' life that of our three kings today, Herod, Caesar, and Jesus, Jesus is the one living up to the ideals of what kingship can truly look like, as outlined in our psalm for today. Unlike Herod, who murdered his fellow citizens and helped himself to their property to pay off his tremendous debts, Jesus is one who would rule the people righteously and the poor with justice. Unlike Caesar, who ran roughshod over Galilee, Judea, and every province that Rome overtook, Jesus is one who would defend the needy among the people, rescue the poor, and crush the oppressor. As we heard in our reading from last week, Herod murdered all the young boys of Bethlehem in an attempt to kill this toddler king of the Jews. But unlike Herod, Jesus has compassion on the lowly and poor and preserves the lives of the needy. All four gospel accounts record that Jesus was executed as enemy of Caesar, with his crime written over his head at his crucifixion. This is the King of the Jews. But unlike the Roman emperor, from oppression and violence, he redeems their lives, and precious is their blood in his sight. The King of the Jews is no tyrant, but a toddler, no oppressor who insists on being worshipped as a god, but one who grows up to be a gentle shepherd who teaches, heals, and serves. Not a king as we might think of one, wielding power in corruption and oppression, but a child who has been born, even to us, as King of the Jews. Thanks be to God. Amen.